are genetic, caused by mutation in enzyme which is involved in the metabolism of a particular substrate. So whenever that enzyme is deficient, leads to the accumulation of the substrate into the different tissues of body that alter their functions and metabolism. So there are hereditary biochemical disorders which are caused by gene mutation. You know, the gene encodes for a specific proteins, and the proteins in turn exert. So when gene is protein structure, that ultimately leads to metabolic disorders. Alteration of primary protein structure or amount of protein, functional ability of is comprised of two types of disorder. Either that protein is not used or its function is altered. Both of them in turn result in alteration of body function. So as I have discussed earlier, that these disorders usually manifest in the neonatal period, usually diagnosed in infancy. Very rare these disorders are diagnosed beyond infancy period, but most of the time they are so evident, so symptomatic that one can easily pick them in the neonatal period. So we classify the inborn error of metabolism into 5 major groups. Remember these groups because they aid you in diagnosis. The defects of amino acid metabolism, defects of lipid metabolism, defects of carbohydrate metabolism, defect of nucleic acid synthesis, and defects of urea cycle defects, or you can simply say urea cycle defects. These are divided into 5 major groups. I will repeat again: defects of protein or amino acid metabolism, defects of carbohydrate metabolism, defects of lipid metabolism, defects of nucleic acid metabolism, and defects of lysosomal enzyme. So first of all, we will start most common, that is the defect of amino acid metabolism. There are n number of disorders that are broadly categorized as defects of amino acid metabolism, but here the most important one we discussed, and you are surely going to get any MCQs from these disorders in your prof as well. So kindly listen to them carefully, because I am highlighting only the important points. I am not going into the detail of these disorders.
मैम
Yes beta, please.
मैम आपकी स्लाइड्स मूव कर रही हैं।
नहीं मूव कर रही, लेट मी चेक। अभी क्या स्क्रीन शेयर हो रही है?
मैम बस वो इंट्रोडक्शन में लिखा हुआ है प्रोफेसर आई मोहम्मद असगर।
अच्छा,
मूव हुई है मैम।
अब हो रही है अच्छा?
मैम अब बस इनबॉर्न एरर्स ऑफ मेटाबॉलिज्म लिखा हुआ है।
बट आई थिंक इट इज टेकिंग टाइम। मेरे ख्याल से यहाँ से तो मैं मूव कर रही हूँ, उधर पता नहीं क्यों नहीं एग्जीक्यूट हो रहा। व्हाट अबाउट नाउ? अब कौन सी आ रही है?
मैम मुझे तो वही इनबॉर्न ही नजर आ रहा है।
बेटा कोई और मुझे फीडबैक देगा उनके साथ कौन सी स्क्रीन शेयर हो रही है?
मैम वो है इनबॉर्न
जी प्लीज बताइए।
मैम सेकंड स्लाइड है।
सेकंड स्लाइड है। Just give me 1 minute. Still you are stuck on the second slide?
No, ma'am, now it's the fourth slide.
Fourth
Defect
slide.
in metabolism of amino acids.
Yes, I think it is taking time, but the slides are changed. I think you will maybe by 1 to 2 minutes. Just listen to me what I am saying. You can go through the slides later on. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so first of all, we will be discussing briefly about defects of amino acid metabolism. As I have told earlier that in these disorders, there is defect of specific enzyme, and the defect of that enzyme will lead to accumulation substrate into the tissues of the body that alter their function. Normally, substance is present, but it is metabolized by that particular enzyme. But when that enzyme is not present, the substrate will accumulate, and the accumulation above will alter of normal tissues of the body. So the first one disorder is classified as phenylketonuria, which is caused by accumulation of amino acid aniline. The second disorders which are classified as tyrosinemia is caused by accumulation of amino acid tyrosine. When I'm going to discuss these disorders, then I will tell you about the deficiency of enzyme, that particular enzyme which is deficient. So the accumulation of methionine is classified as homocystinuria. Organic acidemias is a group of disorder which is caused by accumulation of branched chain amino acids, that is valine, leucine and isoleucine. Urea cycle defects, they come under the subcategory of amino acid metabolic disorders, and they are caused by accumulation of certain substrates which include arginine, citrulline and ornithine. Canavan disease is a genetic disorder which is usually manifested in the infancy and is caused by accumulation of aspartic acid due to specific enzyme deficiency aspartate. Second group of metabolic disorders is defect of lipid metabolism, which are broadly classified as adrenoleukodystrophy. These are caused by accumulation of lipoproteins and which alter the functions of body. The other subcategories of lipid storage disorders include hyperlipidemia, GM1 gangliosidosis, GM2 gangliosidosis, Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick disease, and metachromatic leukodystrophy. Among these, the most common in the pediatric population are the metachromatic leukodystrophy and the adrenoleukodystrophy. I'm going to repeat the names of these disorders as well. Previously, we have discussed the defects of amino acid metabolism, in which the important ones were included phenylketonuria, tyrosinemia, defects of branched chain acids, which are collectively known as organic acidemias. The fourth were the urea cycle defects, and fifth one was the Canavan disease. In the second group, we are discussing the defects of lipid metabolism. The broad categories of these disorders include hyperlipidemia caused by deposition of lipoprotein, GM1 gangliosidosis, GM2 gangliosidosis, Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick disease, metachromatic, and adrenoleukodystrophy. All the diseases slightly differ from each other because of the on the basis of the substrate that accumulates and on the basis of enzyme that is deficient. Is the screen visible to all of you? The screen of lipid metabolism. Please give me your input as
No,
well.
ma'am.
Okay, which screen is visible to you?
The
Slide.
metabolism of amino acids.
Okay, I think you will. It will be visible within 1 to 2 minutes. I don't know what is the defect, as there is no technical here with me right now.
Okay.
So the third category is a defect of carbohydrate metabolism. It is very common. It is very important metabolic disorder in children. Please do not skip this topic from a pediatric book, because you are definitely going to get some of the MCQs for this disorder. These include the glycogen storage disorders. You must have seen patients in your clinical rotation in the one with glycogen storage disorders. And the second important, there are many others, but as I have told you earlier, that I will be highlighting only the important and the common metabolic. So second group of carbohydrate metabolic disorders include galactosemia. So far we have discussed the three main groups: defects of amino acid metabolism, defects of lipid metabolism, and defects of carbohydrate metabolism. So we are just left with two main groups, which include mucopolysaccharidosis. Have anyone of you listened to this word or terminology, mucopolysaccharidosis? Have any one of you heard this before, or is it is a new terminology? I think in biochemistry you must have heard this. Wake up, students, give me your input.
No.
Okay, so this is new for you. It is not a common, it is a rare group of rare genetic disorders which are also classified under the category of inborn error of metabolism. These are caused by deficiency of enzymes that lead to accumulation of mucopolysaccharides. These are the compounds that consist of carbohydrates with some protein structures. So the combination of these is known as mucopolysaccharides, and the accumulation of mucopolysaccharides in turn will result in mental retardation and a wide array of functional abnormalities. The mucopolysaccharidosis are classified into 7 main types. You should know about 3 to 4 types, but broadly they are classified into 7 main types. And this classification is based on the difference in the clinical manifestation and on the basis of the enzyme deficiency. So you may just learn the name. The MPS1, is this slide visible or not, or should I repeating? Tell me, is the slide visible of mucopolysaccharidosis?
Oh man.
Okay, I don't know, but I'm very sorry about this technical error. So you just listen to me what I'm saying. Mucopolysaccharidosis we classify into 7 main types. I'm going to take the name of these types. You just listen and go read through the book. Just highlight the important clinical manifestation and the enzyme deficiency, because it will be really difficult for you to learn each and every detail of the type. The MPS1 is also known as Hurler. MPS1S is known as Shies. MPS2 is known as Hunter. You must have heard about Hunter and Hurler. I think you must have heard about these before. The third type is known as Sanfilippo, which is also known as MPS3. Sanfilippo. The fourth type is known as Marcuse. The fifth MPS type is known as Marotex lami, and the seventh one is known as Sly. These are difficult for you for the first time, but when you keep on repeating, you will have these pronunciation on your fingertips. MPS1 is Hunter, MPS1S is Shy, the 2 is Hunter, 3 is Sanfilippo, 4th is Marcuse, and sixth one is Marotex lami, 7th one is Sly. And the last group which we are going to discuss now is the defects of purine and pyrimidine metabolism. The common disorders which are come in this category include gout and Leishman syndrome. Okay, so now we will, and there is I'm not will not consider this group as specific inborn error of metabolism, but here they have discussed the defects of heme biosynthesis as well, which are generally known as porphyrias. Porphyrias are a group of metabolic disorders which are caused by defect of enzyme involved in heme biosynthesis, and as you know, heme is the part of hemoglobin. It is a protein that is the part of hemoglobin. So the defects of different enzymes are may lead to different types of porphyrias. The common one include acute intermittent porphyria, Porphyria cutaneous tarda, and erythropoietic protoporphyria. These are the important types in pediatric age group. So the clinical manifestation, these are the generalized clinical manifestation of any patient which you suspect of having inborn error of metabolism. These are not specific to any type, whether they are related to defects of amino acid or lipid metabolism. These are the generalized clinical manifestation. As I have discussed earlier, that the symptoms usually appear in the neonatal period, number 1. They are not delayed. Like there are certain diseases, for example, the developmental disorders or the cerebral palsy, in which the symptoms appear maybe after 1 year or 2 years of life. But in case of inborn error of metabolism, the symptoms are usually evident in the neonatal period. These conditions are lethal. They may lead to death, but some patients may survive up to 10 to 15 years of age. Number 3, these are the generalized symptoms. They are not specific symptoms. So therefore, we may confuse it with sepsis. We may confuse the patient, the neonate having sepsis, but in reality, that patient may have inborn error of metabolism. So you have to keep the diagnosis of inborn error of metabolism in your differentials whenever you examine the symptom or a neonate having such symptoms. So what are the symptoms? These include reluctance to feed. The most common symptom in the neonate is reluctance to feed. The neonate may not be interested in having feed. Lethargy, convulsions. Convulsions are very important because they are indication of some underlying infection such as meningitis, or they may be indication of some inborn error of metabolism. So the common presentations include reluctance to feed, convulsions, lethargy, vomiting, or decreased feeding intolerance. The baby may go into coma or have altered consciousness. And when you ask about the history, most of the hereditary disorders are caused by consanguineous marriage. I'm not saying that they are caused, obviously they are caused by gene mutation, but the prevalence and the risk of inheritance is slightly increased in case of consanguineous marriages. So in most of the cases, you will have the history of consanguinity. History of early neonatal deaths. When you ask the parents about some previous neonatal death, they will most of the time give you the history that they had child as well that had similar symptoms and that died in maybe in infancy or in the neonatal period as well. Other so we have so far we have discussed the symptoms. The symptoms include reluctance to feed, lethargy, poor activity, poor neonatal reflexes, vomiting, and convulsions, or they may be altered consciousness. There is history of consanguinity in parents. There is history of early neonatal deaths in other siblings. Now we are going to discuss about the specific signs. The specific signs which you have to pick up are: number one, hepatomegaly. Hepatomegaly is present in 90% of the cases with inborn error of metabolism. Unusual order. Unusual order is basically due to the accumulation of substrates into the body tissue that give that particular order. We will discuss about the different types of specific orders which are present in different inborn error of metabolism. So far, you are getting my point. So far, everything is clear or not? Give me your input as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Students, am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, there was some problem with internet connection here. So let's resume our lecture. So far, we had discussed about the early neonatal signs and symptoms that indicate towards inborn error of metabolism. So now I will discuss some important points in the postnatal period that may indicate towards the diagnosis of inborn error of metabolism. These include um, any kind of so these include uh, persistent fits, failure to thrive, developmental delay, and gross motor deficits. These are the four important points that will indicate definitely to some metabolic disorder. I'm repeating again that post neonatal age, that is after the first 28 days of life, if the patient present with persistent fits or convulsions, developmental delay, mental retardation, and gross motor deficits, like for example, if the baby is not have achieved neck holding, if the baby has not developed any eye contact, you may investigate him or her for some inborn error of metabolism. So most of the times the symptoms are evident in the neonatal period, and sometimes they appear after the neonatal period, but in both of cases you have to take them seriously because these conditions are very lethal. The other signs, the signs are those findings which a physician has to pick, and symptoms are those complaints that are usually explained by the patient. So you may know, you should know the difference between the signs and symptoms. The other signs you may pick are the unusual order, hepatomegaly, renal stones, muscle weakness or cardiomyopathy, and jaundice. Jaundice is one of the very important signs that you have to pick up, because jaundice in the neonatal period may be normal or physiological, or it may be pathological. One of the important cause of prolonged pathological jaundice in neonates is inborn error of metabolism. So I'm now going, this is a very, very important slide. I don't know whether it's visible to you or not. It is a clinical approach to a newborn infant with suspected metabolic disorder. Like for example, if you are sitting in your OPD and a mother takes her child to you with the complaints of persistent vomiting, fits, jaundice, reluctance to feed, one of the differentials in your mind is inborn error of metabolism, and other includes sepsis or some infection. So how will you confirm, how will you proceed with your differential diagnosis? First of all, you will ask the mother to get her serum ammonia levels. Serum ammonia levels. Whenever you suspect a patient with inborn error of metabolism, you obtain the plasma ammonia levels. And on the basis of plasma ammonia levels, we classify into two major groups. If the plasma ammonia level is normal, or if the plasma ammonia levels or is abnormal, that is, it is markedly raised. So these are the two major categories under the metabolic disorders, that is the disorders with normal ammonia levels and the disorders with high ammonia levels. Once you have obtained plasma ammonia levels, you will do the ABGs, that is arterial blood gases. And on the basis of ABG's report, we divide the metabolic disorders into three main categories. This is a very important slide, and this is the slide that really help you till your postgraduate level. The suspected metabolic disorders, you will do the ammonia levels. If the serum ammonia levels are high, then you will go for ABGs. If the serum ammonia levels are normal, even then you will go for ABGs. And on the basis of ammonia results, the ABGs results, you will see three important things. If the ABGs are normal and the serum ammonia levels are normal, you will suspect urea cycle defect. I am repeating again, if serum ammonia levels are normal and if ABGs are normal, you will suspect urea cycle defects. If serum ammonia levels are normal and is some abnormality of ABGs, that is arterial blood gas, you will calculate the anion gap. Can any of you tell me what is anion gap? Any one of you? What is anion gap? Have you heard about this term anion gap before? आवाज आ रही है आप लोगों को मेरी?
Yes, ma'am.
बता दो बेटा, कोई भी है जितना कॉन्सेप्ट है मुझे बता दो.
Ma'am, anion gap is the difference between the primary calculated cations, that is sodium and potassium, and the measured anions, okay, chloride or bicarbonate.
Two. Good, very good. It is the difference between the unmeasured anions and unmeasured cations. We usually do the serum sodium and potassium, chloride and bicarb. We add sodium and potassium and we add chloride and bicarb concentration, and we will take the difference between two. Normal serum anion gap is 12 to 20 milliequivalent. So far we have done in the investigation of IEM the serum ammonia levels, and then we have done the serum ABGs. If both are normal, we suspect urea cycle defect. If the serum ammonia levels are high and ABGs are abnormal, we will calculate the anion gap. Okay? And if the anion gap is normal, you will suspect amino acidopathies, that is the defect of amino acid metabolism, or the second group is galactosemia. I am repeating again, if your serum ammonia level is normal but your anion gap is also normal, you will suspect urea cycle defects. Is that clear? But if your serum ammonia, is the screen visible to you, this approach? Is this approach screen is visible to you or not?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible to me.
It's you can save it because it's a very important and very easy slide. So if the anion gap is high and there is normal serum ammonia levels, you will suspect organic acidemia. And if there is normal anion gap but high serum ammonia, you will suspect amino acidopathies. So as I told you earlier that abnormal order from the body is a suspicion of inborn error of metabolism. These are the common disorders which are associated with abnormal order. In glutaric acidemia, there is sweat-like odor from the body, sweaty feet. So this disorder is also known as sweaty feet disorder. Isovaleric acidemia is also associated with sweat-like disorder order. Tyrosinemia, in this the body odor is very unbearable. It's like boiled cabbage disorder. Hypermethionemia, same like tyrosinemia, it has the body odor like boiled cabbage. Maple syrup urine disease, in this disease it is a common disorder, and the body odor is like of maple syrup. Phenylketonuria, mousy or musty odor. Trimethylamminuria, it is a rooting fish odor from the body. So PKU is a very common genetic disorder in pediatric population. It is a hereditary disorder which is inherited as autosomal recessive trait. It is caused by deficiency of enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase, which causes the conversion of phenylalanine into tyrosine. So whenever this enzyme is deficient or is absent, what will happen? There will be accumulation of phenylalanine in the tissues, and the abnormal concentration of this amino acid will alter the function of body. So what are the important clinical manifestation of PKU? The infants appear normal at birth, but later within first week of life or maybe in the second week of life, they develop vomiting, fits, jaundice, reluctance to feed. These children have fair complexion or lighter complexion. They have mousy odor. They have normal or purposeless movements of the body. They are hypotonic, mentally retarded, and microcephalic. You may just need to know 3 or 4 important signs and symptoms. As you know that reluctance to feed, jaundice, fits, these are common to all inborn error of metabolism. Differentiating points are mouse PKU, they are fair complexion or lighter complexion. They are hypotonic with abnormal movements of the body. How I diagnose the case of PKU? You will get plasma phenylalanine levels which are markedly raised. You can get urinary phenylketones which are abnormally raised. The most important or the definitive diagnostic test is the enzyme assay. You will get the enzyme assay and there will be either absolute deficiency or decreased function of enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase. In newborn period, if you suspect phenylketonuria, you may get the Guthrie screen done. You may not know about Guthrie screening. It is a filter paper that has a different metabolic disorder name mentioned on it. You just put a drop of blood on that filter paper and it will indicate towards the suspicion of a particular metabolic disorder. The other diagnostic tools include fluorometry and mass spectrometry. Most common metabolic disorder is the disorder of carbohydrate metabolism, that is galactosemia. I have discussed only one common protein amino acid metabolic disorder, that is PKU or phenylketonuria. Now I will discuss about galactosemia. It is also inherited as autosomal recessive trait and it is caused by deficiency of enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase that ultimately leads to accumulation of galactose in the body. The common clinical manifestations include jaundice, reluctance to feed or vomiting, hepatomegaly, hypoglycemia. That is the important differentiating point. In PKU, the different points included mental retardation, microcephaly, light screen, hypertonia, and abnormal movements of the body along with mousy order. In galactosemia, the important differentiating points are persistent hypoglycemia, cataract, hepatic cirrhosis, and ascites. The other common features are similar to other group of metabolic disorders. So in the patient with galactosemia, when you will check the BSR, they will show persistent reading of hypoglycemia. Diagnosis. How will you diagnose galactosemia? First of all, you will send urine for reducing substances. You will label the sample as check the urine for reducing substances because galactose is a reducing sugar and when it is not metabolized, will be secreted in the urine and when you will send the urine sample for reducing substances, you can that galactose can easily be picked up. The second is the galactosuria on chromatography. Chromatography is not a diagnostic test, it is just a supportive test. Third, the definitive diagnostic test is the decreased activity of enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase in enzyme assay screening. So how will you manage the patient? Sorry, I forgot to tell about the management of PKU. In PKU, we usually advise the patient to get phenylalanine free diet because there is no ultimate solution on or either you can get enzyme replacement which is not possible here in Pakistan. You will just ask parents to feed the child with phenylalanine free formula. There are specific milk formulas which are deficient in enzyme phenylalanine and you may advise the parents to give them these feeds. And in case of galactosemia, you will advise the parents or the attendants to give the child galactose-free diet. Third important group of metabolic disorders are the Gaucher's disease. Gaucher's disease, as I have discussed earlier, it is a mucopolysaccharidosis. It is a group of mucopolysaccharidosis or the lipid storage disease. It is also inherited as autosomal recessive trait and it is caused by deficiency of enzyme galactosidase. What are the clinical manifestations? The Gaucher's disease is further classified into three main categories on the basis of its clinical manifestation. Type 1 is least lethal. It is characterized by progressive hepatosplenomegaly, anemia, and bruising and bone pain. In type 2, you may have it is a slightly severe form. There is progressive neurodegeneration along with hypertonia, strabismus, and stridor. Neurodegeneration is the hallmark of Gaucher's disease. Third type is characterized by subacute neuropathic pain. How will you diagnose Gaucher disease? First of all, you will have a slight, you will pick up the symptoms which are not specific, then you will go for bone marrow biopsy. In bone marrow biopsy, you may find the Gaucher cells. What are Gaucher cells? These are basically the characteristic cell with the wrinkle paper appearance, and this wrinkle paper appearance is due to the intracytoplasmic accumulation of substrate, that is the mucopolysaccharide within the cell, that gives the cell the wrinkle paper appearance, and these are diagnostic of Gaucher's disease. The management, there is no specific management. The treatment is supportive. The enzyme replacement therapy is, if available, should be done. Bone marrow transplantation can be done, and gene therapy is emerging field nowadays that has promising results. Glycogen storage diseases, there are 8 important types on the basis of the specific enzyme that is deficient. The type 1 is also known as von Gerke, type 2 is Pompe, type 3 is Forbes, type 4 is Anderson, type 5 is Ardle, like Ardle, type 6 is Hertz, and type 7 is Tori. There is no specific name for type 8 glycogen storage disease. I will just repeat the names. Type 1 is von Gerke, type 2 is Pompe, type 3 is Forbes, type 4 is Anderson, type 5 is McArdle, type 6 Hertz, and type 7 Tori. The most common one are the type 1 and type 2. Type 1, which is also known as von Gerke, it is a genetic disorder inherited as autosomal recessive trait and caused by deficiency of enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. In MCQs, usually you get enzyme that is you are usually asked about the enzyme that is deficient or absent in particular metabolic disorder. So far we have discussed PKU, in which the enzyme that was deficient. Can anyone tell me which enzyme was deficient in PKU?
Phenylalanine hydroxylase.
Very good, excellent. Phenylalanine hydroxylase. Which enzyme is deficient in Gaucher's disease? No one? That is a difficult enzyme. Beta glucosidase. Okay. What enzyme is deficient in tyrosinemia? I have not told you about tyrosinemia, but let me check. Does anyone of you know or not? Galactosemia. Can anyone tell which enzyme is deficient in galactosemia? Galactosemia is quite common. Any one of you? Glucose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. So in von Gerke, the enzyme that is deficient is glucose 6-phosphatase. You will recall your biochemistry after reading these enzymes. They are quite difficult. So clinical manifestation, the important ones are doll's faces. These children have typical doll's faces with fat cheeks. They have chubby cheek appearance. They have thin extremities, failure to thrive, short stature. They have massive hepatosplenomegaly. There will be persistent hypoglycemia, and that hypoglycemia may manifest as seizures. They have enlarged kidneys or hydronephrosis. There may be lactic acidosis. Is this picture visible to all of you? This is a typical picture of with von Gerke or type 1 glycogen storage disorder. You may notice the doll's faces with fat cheeks. The cataract is not visible in this picture, but they may or may not have cataract as well in eyes. They are mentally retarded. They have hypoglycemia, and that hypoglycemia may result in convulsions or fits. How will you diagnose a glycogen storage disorder? There will be when you check the BSI, there will be persistent hypoglycemia. It is specific glucagon test, which I'm not going to tell you into the details as I don't have much time. The most definitive test is the enzyme assay and liver biopsy. Management. Since these patients have persistent hypoglycemia, you have to administer glucose externally. So the management includes continuous administration of glucose and uncooked cornstarch. Why uncooked cornstarch? Because it gradually increases the blood glucose level over a period of time. There is no rapid increase and fall in blood glucose. It gives persistently slow release of glucose into the blood. So hypoglycemic episodes can be avoided and so conversions can be controlled. The other management protocols include multivitamins such as calcium administration, avoid sucrose, fructose and sorbitols because these are the reducing sugars and they cannot be metabolized. You have to give uric acid lowering drug, that is allopurinol. You have to give lipid lowering drugs such as statins and fibrates, ACE inhibitors for microalbuminuria, granulocyte and granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factors because they usually disturb the bone marrow and bone marrow synthesis. So you give these colony stimulating factors to prevent anemias or leukopenias which are caused by this disorder. The ultimate management includes gene replacement and liver transplantation. Type 2 Pompe so important points in type 1 was Doll spacing. So you should always remember persistent hypoglycemia shakes. What is the diagnosis? Diagnosis is type 1 glycogen storage disorder, which is known as POMC. Type 2 is also known as Pompe's disease. Also, most of the metabolic disorders are autosomal recessive. They are very, very rare disorders that are autosomal dominant. 99% of disorders are autosomal recessive. It is caused by deficiency of enzyme alpha glycoside. Clinical manifestations include hypotonia. These are the body tone is very decreased. They have reluctance to feed. The important differentiating points are macroglossia. They have very enlarged tongue along with cardiomegaly. These are two important differentiating points. They are hypotonic, have cardiomegaly, and macroglossia. The enlarged tongue, enlarged heart with decreased tone. The other symptoms are similar to other disorders. So how will you diagnose a patient with POMPIS? There will be, since it involves muscles, so muscle enzymes will be raised. What are the three different types of muscle enzyme? Creatine phosphokinase, aspartate aminotransferase, and LDH, which is also hydrogenase. So muscle enzymes will be raised. Chest X-ray may show massive cardiomegaly since this disease involves heart as well. Number 3, the ECG may show high voltage